The chamber stretched wide and tall, filled with beings from across the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the center platform, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the assembled delegates ignore his presentation. He had been making this same speech, with minor variations, for 3 years now. The response never changed. Admiral Claire Hudson sat in the human delegation box, her jaw tight as she listened to the Valorian representative dismiss their latest proposal without even looking at the data. Beside her, Dr. Ben Carter tapped his fingers against his knee. A nervous habit he had developed during these endless sessions. The Galactic Council chamber on Concordia Prime was designed to intimidate. 200 species had representatives here, though only a dozen truly mattered. The Valorian Empire held the most power, their delegations seated in the highest tier, looking down on everyone else. The Xinthian Collective occupied the second tier, their crystalline forms glowing faintly in the filtered light. The Carthon Republic sat across from them, their scaled faces showing barely concealed contempt for the proceedings. Morrison had learned to read the room over his decade of service. Today would be no different from yesterday or the day before. The vote was already decided before he spoke a single word. High Chancellor the Kesserone of the Valorian Empire rose from his seat. His forearms spread wide in a gesture that looked welcoming but was anything but. His voice carried across the chamber through the translation systems built into every seat. The human delegation presents their case for full council membership once again, Dexerone said, his tone making it clear what he thought of that case. They cite their technological contributions and their expansion into 14 systems. They mention their trade relationships and cultural exchanges. All of this is noted and appreciated. Morrison knew what was coming next. He had heard this speech, or variations of it, 47 times. However, the Council must consider the broader picture, Dexerone continued. Humanity developed faster than light travel a mere 73 years ago. By galactic standards, they are infants. The youngest current Council member had achieved interstellar flight for 3,000 years before joining. Humanity's rapid expansion is precisely the concern. They move too fast, claim too much, and show insufficient respect for established protocols. The Carthon delegates stood, not waiting for recognition. Furthermore, humans are dangerous. Their history shows constant warfare, territorial aggression, and an inability to cooperate even among themselves. They unified their homeworld only 40 years ago. How can we trust a species that spent millennia fighting itself to suddenly play nicely with 200 other civilizations? Several delegates murmured agreement. Morrison noticed that the smaller delegations, those from newer or less powerful species, remained silent. They always did. Speaking in support of humanity meant drawing the ire of the major powers. Claire leaned close to Morrison and whispered, "We should walk out now and save ourselves the embarrassment." Morrison shook his head slightly. He wanted to hear them say it. He wanted to hear them reject humanity one more time, clearly and without ambiguity. He needed that for what came next. The vote was called. Of the 200 delegates present, only 3 voted in favor of human membership. The Delveri, a species humanity had helped fight off a plague 2 years ago. The Mercian, who traded extensively with human colonies, and the Yoth, who voted yes on every proposal as a matter of principle. 173 voted no. 24 abstained. Dexerone smiled, showing too many teeth. The motion fails, as expected. The human delegation may resubmit their application in 1 standard year, as is their right as an observer species. This session is adjourned. Morrison stood there for a moment, letting the noise of the departing delegates wash over him. Ben stood and started gathering their presentation materials. Claire remained seated, her eyes locked on Nexerone as he conversed with other major power delegates, probably sharing jokes about the presumptuous humans. "Jake," Claire said quietly, "what are you going to do?" Morrison walked to the speaker's podium. The chamber was half empty now, most delegates filing out to attend receptions and private meetings. He activated the podium's amplification system. The sound cut through the conversations like a blade. "I have a statement," Morrison said. Dexerone turned, looking annoyed. "Captain Morrison, the session has concluded." Any statements must wait for the next scheduled meeting. This won't take long, Morrison replied. His voice was calm, almost conversational. Humanity came to these stars seeking partnership. We offered our knowledge, our strength, our friendship. You have answered with contempt. Very well. Negotiations have failed. Humanity departs. What happens next is your responsibility, not ours. The chamber fell silent. Delegates who had been halfway out the door stopped. That Tsaronis expression shifted from annoyance to confusion. Captain Morrison, what exactly do you mean by this? The High Chancellor asked. I mean exactly what I said, Morrison replied. Humanity is withdrawing from all galactic institutions, effective immediately. We are recalling our ambassadors, closing our embassies, and evacuating all human personnel from galactic space. We came in peace. We were rejected. We accept your decision and will trouble you no further. Carthon delegate laughed, the sound harsh and barking. You cannot simply leave the galactic community. You occupy systems under council jurisdiction. You utilize trade routes established by council members. You benefit from the stability the council provides. Morrison looked at the Carthon delegate with an expression that was almost pitying. We occupy systems we discovered and settled ourselves. We use trade routes we helped map and maintain. And as for stability, we have never asked for council protection because we have never needed it. You seem to be confusing our courtesy for dependence. The Xinthian ambassador's crystalline form flickered. This is an emotional outburst. Humans are known for these. The captain will reconsider after he has calmed himself. I am perfectly calm, Morrison said. I have never been more calm in my life. For 15 years, I have watched humanity beg for acceptance from people who will never grant it. I am done begging. We all are. Claire and Ben had moved to stand beside him now. Claire's hand rested on her sidearm, not threatening, just ready. Ben held the presentation materials in a stack against his chest. Dexerone descended from his tier, his forearms gesturing in what was probably meant to be a calming manner. Captain, let us not be hasty. Perhaps the council has been too conservative in its approach. We could schedule a special session to reconsider the membership question. No, Morrison said simply. You made your position clear over 15 years. We accept it. We will make our position equally clear over the next few weeks. Good day, High Chancellor. Morrison turned and walked toward the exit. Claire and Ben followed. Behind them, the chamber erupted in noise as delegates shouted questions and demands. Morrison ignored all of it. In the corridor outside, Ben finally spoke. That was either the bravest thing I have ever seen or the most insane. Probably both, Claire said. Jake, you know they are going to try to stop the evacuation. They will call it illegal, claim we are stealing council resources, maybe even send ships to blockade human settlements. Morrison kept walking toward the human embassy section. Let them try. We have been preparing for this for 5 years. Every human facility has evacuation protocols ready. Every ship has orders waiting. Every piece of equipment we built has destruct codes programmed. They wanted us to know our place. They are about to learn that our place is wherever we decide it to be, and we have decided it is not here. They reached the embassy, and Morrison went straight to the communication center. He entered his command codes and opened a channel to every human settlement, ship, and station in galactic space. This is Captain Jake Morrison, Chief Human Ambassador to the Galactic Council. As of this moment, all diplomatic negotiations with the galactic community have been terminated. All personnel are to begin evacuation procedures immediately. Civilian transports have priority. Military vessels will provide escort and security. No human technology, research, or infrastructure is to be left functional. Everything we built, we take with us or destroy. We leave nothing behind. Confirm receipt and begin operations. Responses started flooding in within seconds. Confirmations from mining operations, research stations, trade posts, and colony worlds. Humanity was leaving, and they were leaving nothing behind. Claire watched the confirmations roll in and allowed herself a small smile. They really have no idea what is about to hit them. Morrison nodded. They think we need them. They are about to learn how wrong they are. And when they finally understand that, it will be far too late. Lieutenant Kyle Hayes stood on the bridge of the destroyer Defiant, watching the tactical display as 17 civilian transports formed up behind his ship. The evacuation of Epsilon Station had gone smoothly. They still had to cross through the Carthon patrol zone to reach the jump point. His crew was ready, weapons powered but not locked. He hoped it would stay that way. The Carthon had been making noise about the human evacuation for 3 days now. Their government claimed that humans were stealing council resources and violating territorial agreements. Kyle knew it was Gar. Baga. Epsilon Station had been built entirely with human materials and labor. Every bolt and wire belonged to humanity. But the Carthon had never let facts get in the way of a good excuse to flex their military power. His sensor officer looked up from her console. "Commander, I have 2 Carthon frigates moving to intercept. They are hailing us." Kyle settled into his command chair. "Put them through." The view screen flickered, and a Carthon captain appeared, his scaled face showing what Kyle had learned to recognize as smug satisfaction. "Human vessel, you are ordered to stand down and submit to customs inspection. Your cargo manifest shows mining equipment and refined materials that may be subject to council export restrictions." Kyle kept his voice level and professional. "Captain, we are transporting civilian personnel and their personal property through open space. We have broken no laws and require no inspection. Please stand aside." The Carthon captain's crest flared, a sign of aggression. "You do not give orders here, human. You will comply, or we will disable your vessels and board them by force." Kyle glanced at his weapons officer, who nodded slightly. Everything was ready. "Captain, I will ask one more time. Stand down and let us pass. This does not need to become a confrontation." "You think your single destroyer frightens us?" the Carthon captain snarled. "We are the Carthon Republic, enforcers of council law. You are nothing but upstart children playing with technology you barely understand," Kyle sighed. He had tried. Weapons. Execute pattern delta. Disable only. No lethal force. The Defiant moved so fast that the Carthon ships barely had time to react. Precision laser fire took out their weapon systems in the first 3 seconds. Electromagnetic pulses scrambled their targeting computers in the next 5 seconds. A focused gravity pulse collapsed their shield generators in the final 9 seconds. Both Carthon frigates went dark, drifting but intact. Their crews unharmed but completely helpless. Kyle opened the channel again. "Your crews are safe, and your life support is functional. Repair ships should reach you in approximately 4 hours. I suggest you use that time to reconsider your approach to diplomacy." Defiant out. Close the channel and turned to his helmsman. "Take us to the jump point. Best speed. Civilian transports, stay in formation." As they accelerated away, Kyle's second officer spoke quietly. "Sir, that was 17 seconds from first shot to mission complete. That has to be some kind of record." Kyle watched the disabled Carthon ships fall behind on the display. "Send the engagement data to Fleet Command. They will want to know that Carthon vessels are even easier to disable than our simulations predicted. Every other escort group should have an easier time now." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Human ships moved through space with purpose and precision. Every time someone tried to stop them, the result was the same. Quick, efficient, overwhelming response that left no doubt about human capabilities. On the trade hub of New Casablanca, merchant captain Lisa Monroe walked through her warehouse one last time. She had built this business from nothing over 12 years. 300 employees, most of them non-human. Contracts with 40 different species. A reputation for reliability and fair dealing that had made her wealthy and respected. Her Xinthian business partner, Krax, waited near the main entrance. His crystalline body pulsed with colors that Lisa had learned meant anxiety and hope. "Lisa, please reconsider. We have been partners for so long. Surely we can negotiate new terms that would be acceptable to both human and galactic interests." Lisa stopped and turned to face him. "Krax, you voted against human council membership 3 times. The Xinthian's colors shifted to defensive orange. I voted with the collective. It was not personal. It was simply politics. Politics, Lisa repeated. You put politics above friendship, above partnership, and now you want me to stay because leaving would be inconvenient for you. Krax moved closer, his voice taking on a pleading tone. I am prepared to offer you very favorable terms for your facilities here. 50,000 credits for the warehouses, equipment, and inventory. That is more than fair market value. Lisa pulled out a small remote from her jacket. Krax, those warehouses alone are worth 500,000 credits. The equipment is worth another 200,000. And the inventory is worth at least 300,000. You are offering me 50,000 for 1,000,000 credits worth of assets. The market has changed, Krax said quickly. With humans leaving, values are dropping. 50,000 is generous under the circumstances. Lisa pressed a button on the remote. Deep in the warehouse complex, charges began detonating. Nothing dangerous to people, just enough to completely destroy every piece of equipment. Every computer system, every automated loader and scanner. Within 30 seconds, the entire facility was reduced to worthless scrap. Krax's colors flashed to shocked white. What have you done? That was worth a fortune. It was worth a fortune to me, Lisa said calmly. To you, it is worth exactly what you were willing to pay. 50,000 credits worth of scrap metal and broken plastic. Enjoy your generous purchase, partner. She walked past him, toward the spaceport, where her personal ship waited. Behind her, Krax stood frozen, watching 1,000,000 credits worth of infrastructure burn. At the Archimedes research station, Dr. Sophie Grant supervised the final data purge. The station had been humanity's premier xenobiology facility, home to samples and research from 70 different alien species. The work done here had led to vaccines, medical treatments, and agricultural advances that had helped billions across the galaxy. Her assistant, a young researcher named Chris, watched the deletion progress bars with visible pain. Doctor, 15 years of work is being erased. Some of this research is irreplaceable. Sophie nodded, her expression grim but determined. I know, I helped create most of it. But we are not leaving it for people who think we are too primitive to have full rights. A Valorian Science Directorate official had arrived an hour ago, accompanied by armed guards. He stood near the main laboratory entrance, watching the humans work with growing agitation. Finally, he could contain himself no longer. Dr. Grant, this is insanity. The research being destroyed here represents breakthroughs in 17 different fields. You developed the cure for Xinthian crystal rot. You created the vaccine for Carthon-scale plague. You cannot simply erase this knowledge. Sophie turned to face him. Watch me. This research is galactic heritage, the Valorian insisted. It was developed using samples from council member species. It belongs to all civilized beings, not just humanity. Sophie walked over to him, her 5'3" frame somehow intimidating despite the height difference. Who funded this research? Humans. Who staffed this facility? Humans. Who spent 15 years of their lives working 18-hour days to develop these treatments? Humans. And when we asked to be treated as equals, what did the council say? The Valorian had no answer. That is what I thought, Sophie said. We shared our research freely when we thought we were building something together. You've made it clear we are not partners. Fine. From now on, human research stays with humans. You want cures and vaccines? Develop them yourselves. You have 3,000 years of spaceflight experience after all. Should be easy for such advanced civilizations. She returned to her console and entered the final deletion command. Centuries' worth of combined research time vanished in seconds. The Valorian official made a sound like a wounded animal. Sophie picked up her personal bag and walked toward the evacuation shuttle. Her team followed. Behind them, automated systems began the station's self-destruct sequence. In 6 hours, Archimedes would be nothing but debris. Across galactic space, the pattern repeated. Human doctors closed their clinics and erased their patient files. Human engineers shut down manufacturing centers and corrupted the operating code. Human teachers left their universities and took their lesson plans with them. Human merchants liquidated their assets and salted the earth behind them. The galaxy had functioned so smoothly with human involvement that most species had not even noticed how dependent they had become. Trade routes that humans maintained went unserviced. Computer systems that humans had quietly fixed began failing. Medical facilities that humans had staffed closed their doors. Ambassador Morrison gave his final statement from Concordia Prime before boarding the last human transport. Every major news network in galactic space carried it live. For 15 years, humanity sought partnership. We offered our best and received contempt in return. You believed you could take what we freely gave while denying us basic respect. You were wrong. We are leaving now. Every human citizen, every human ship, every human outpost is withdrawing beyond the terminus frontier. Do not follow us. Do not contact us. We will not answer. You wanted to know our place? Our place is anywhere we choose to be, and we choose not to be here. Goodbye. Transmission ended. The last human ship jumped to faster than light speed 6 minutes later. Within 2 months, the galactic economy entered its worst recession in 400 years. And in the shadows of their council chambers and corporate boardrooms, the species who had dismissed humanity so easily began to realize what they had lost. 5 years had passed since the last human ship disappeared beyond the terminus frontier. Calm. Mander Pete Collins sat in his office aboard the Valorian research vessel Enlightenment, staring at yet another failed probe report. 12 probes sent into the terminus region over the past year. 0 had returned. Pete had been assigned to find humanity 6 months ago. The Valorian Empire wanted answers. More importantly, they wanted access to human technology. The power generation systems humans had developed were 30% more efficient than anything the Valorians could build. Their faster-than-light engines somehow managed speeds that violated several accepted principles of physics. And their computer systems had processing capabilities that made Xinthian technology look primitive. But finding humans was proving impossible. The terminus frontier was a nightmare region of space filled with gravitational anomalies and subspace instabilities. Most species avoided it entirely. Humans had flown straight into it and vanished like ghosts. Pete's assistant, a young officer named Greg, entered with another stack of reports. Sir, the economic analysis team has finished their latest assessment. It is not good. Pete took the datapad and scrolled through the summary. The Carthon Republic was experiencing food shortages because their agricultural technology had been maintained almost entirely by human contractors. The Xinthian collective had lost 17% of their computational capacity because human technicians had been quietly keeping ancient systems running. The Valorian Empire itself had seen manufacturing output drop by 23%. They integrated themselves into everything, Pete muttered. How did we not notice? Greg shrugged. They were helpful. They solved problems. Nobody questioned it because everything worked better when humans were involved. Pete pulled up his personal research files, interviews he had conducted with people who worked closely with humans. A Carthon engineer who had collaborated with human designers for 8 years. A Xinthian doctor who trained under human medical staff. A Valorian trade administrator who processed human shipping contracts. The pattern was consistent and disturbing. Humans were always polite, always professional, always willing to help. But they never fully explained their methods. They would solve a problem, but not teach the underlying principles. They would fix a system, but not document the repair process. Pete had interviewed a retired Carthon engineer named Vex just last week. The conversation still bothered him. Humans would look at our designs and just know what was wrong, Vex had said. They would suggest changes that made everything work better. We thought they were just good at engineering. Now I think they were watching us struggle with problems they had solved decades ago. Why would they help if they looked down on you? Pete had asked. Vex had made a gesture of uncertainty. I do not think they looked down on us. I think they were waiting. Waiting to see if we would treat them as equals. We failed that test. Pete closed the file and stood, walking to the viewport. Beyond the reinforced glass, The terminus frontier stretched out like a wall of twisted space. Long-range sensors showed nothing but chaos. Somewhere beyond that chaos, humanity was doing something. Building something. Becoming something. The galactic media had been full of speculation for 5 years. Some said humans were building a rival civilization to challenge the Council. Others suggested they were developing weapons for revenge. The more paranoid voices whispered about human experiments with Forbidden Technologies. Pete thought the truth was simpler and somehow more frightening. Humans were just living their lives without the galaxy. They did not need Council approval or galactic trade or alien partnerships. They had left because staying was pointless, not because leaving was difficult. His communicator chimed. High Chancellor Vexerone wanted a direct report. Pete sighed and activated the secure channel. The High Chancellor appeared on the screen, looking older than Pete remembered. 5 years of economic problems and political pressure had taken their toll. Commander Collins, what progress have you made in locating human settlements? None, sir, Pete admitted. The Terminus region is impenetrable to our sensor technology. Every probe we send either fails immediately or disappears without transmitting data. Any ship attempting to follow human trajectories would face the same conditions. This forearms moved in an agitated pattern. This is unacceptable. The Council has voted to send a military expedition into the Terminus. 30 warships representing Valorian, Carthan, and Xinthian forces. You will accompany them as an advisor. Pete felt his stomach drop. Sir, I must advise against this action. We have no intelligence about human capabilities or intentions. Sending warships could be interpreted as an act of aggression. The humans abandoned galactic society, Vexerone said sharply. They have no right to claim entire regions of space as their exclusive territory. The Council has determined that the Terminus systems must be secured for galactic stability. Pete knew what that meant. The Council wanted human technology, and they were willing to take it by force. Sir, with respect, we have no idea what we would be facing. The humans who left were skilled, but not militarily dominant. 5 years is a long time. They could have developed defenses we cannot anticipate. Then you will help us anticipate them, Vexerone said. The expedition launches in 2 weeks. Prepare your analysis and recommendations. That will be all. The channel closed. Pete sat in silence for several minutes, then began pulling together everything he knew about human military capabilities. It was not much. Humans had been peaceful during their time in galactic space. The few confrontations that occurred, like Lieutenant Hayes disabling those Carthon frigates, showed precision and restraint, but not overwhelming power. But that was 5 years ago. Who knew what humans had developed since then? The expedition assembled at the border of Valorian space 2 weeks later. 30 warships, the largest military force the galaxy had seen in decades. Pete stood on the bridge of the flagship Domination, watching the fleet arrange itself in formation. Carthon dreadnoughts, with their heavy armor plating, Xinthian carriers, with their drone swarms, Valorian cruisers with their long-range weapons. Admiral Krath, Valorian commander, was confident to the point of arrogance. Humans are clever, but they are few. Our intelligence suggests they had fewer than 8 billion people when they left. We represent civilizations with trillions of citizens and thousands of years of military experience. This will be a simple enforcement action. Pete said nothing. He had learned that admirals rarely appreciated cautious advisors. The fleet crossed into the Terminus, frontier in tight formation. Almost immediately, sensors began malfunctioning. Navigation became difficult. Communications grew spotty, but they pressed forward. Following the trajectories that human ships had used 5 years earlier, they traveled for 3 weeks into the chaotic space. No contact with human forces. No signs of habitation. Just endless twisted gravity wells and subspace storms. Pete watched the crew grow nervous. This was not normal space. This was something else entirely. Then the sensors went completely dark. Every ship in the fleet lost all detection capability simultaneously. Admiral Krath ordered the fleet to halt and went to full alert status. They waited in the dark for 6 hours. Then a single human ship appeared. It was not large, perhaps frigate-sized, but it looked wrong. The hull seemed to shift and bend in ways that should not be possible. Energy readings spiked off the scale. The design incorporated principles that Pete did not recognize. A transmission came through on all frequencies. "You have entered human territory. Turn back immediately. This is your only warning," Admiral Krath sneered. "One frigate against 30 warships. Humans have grown arrogant in their isolation. All ships, weapons free. Destroy that vessel." The fleet opened fire. Hundreds of missiles, dozens of energy beams, clouds of kinetic projectiles, enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. The human ship did not even try to dodge. The weapons simply stopped working as they got close. Missiles went inert. Energy beams dispersed. Kinetic rounds slowed to a drift. Then the human ship returned fire. A single pulse of something that sensors could not identify. It washed over the entire fleet like a wave. Every ship went dark. Power systems failed. Weapons offline. Life support switched to emergency backups. But nothing else worked. 30 warships reduced to helpless debris in less than 5 seconds. The human ship remained for exactly 1 minute, then jumped away at speeds. The fleet's barely functional sensors could not track. They drifted for 6 months before rescue ships found them. By then, half the crews had died from life support failures and food shortages. The survivors told stories that no one wanted to believe. Pete survived. He spent the voyage back, writing his report, knowing it would change nothing. The galaxy had poked the beast and discovered it had teeth. Sharp ones. When they finally reached Valorian space, an automated beacon was waiting. Human in origin. Its message was simple. Turn back. This is your only warning. Humanity is no longer interested in galactic affairs. Force us to be interested, and you will regret it. Pete submitted his report to the Valorian High Command with a single recommendation. Leave humanity alone. They were no longer the species that had asked politely for council membership. They had become something else. Something the galaxy was not prepared to face. His report was classified and ignored. But Pete noticed something in the week's thaw. Tea followed. The galactic media stopped speculating about human weakness. A new emotion had entered the conversation: fear. 8 years after humanity departed, the galaxy faced something it had not encountered in centuries. The Devourer swarm emerged from the dark space between galaxies. A hive mind of silicon-based creatures that consumed everything in their path. They did not negotiate. They did not communicate. They simply ate. General Laura Kim commanded the Valorian Third Fleet at the Helios system when the swarm arrived. She had 47 ships under her command, the largest concentration of military power the Valorian Empire could spare. The economic problems from humanity's departure meant that Empire could not afford to maintain its full peacetime fleet anymore. The swarm came in waves. Organic ships that looked like massive insects, covered in crystalline armor that absorbed energy weapons and shrugged off kinetic rounds. They moved with purpose and terrible coordination, each ship acting as part of a greater whole. Laura's tactical officer called out targets as fast as the computers could process them. Admiral count is now 378 enemy vessels and climbing. They are not slowing down. Laura watched the tactical display with growing dread. Her fleet was good. Her crews were experienced. But they were outnumbered 8-1, and the swarm's ships were tough beyond anything she had fought before. All ships, focus fire on the lead elements. Concentrate everything we have on breaking their formations, she ordered. The fleet opened up with everything they had. Energy beams, missiles, mass drivers, even experimental weapons that had never been tested in actual combat. The swarm took losses but kept coming. For every ship they destroyed, 2 more appeared behind it. Laura's flagship, the Celestial Dawn, shuddered as a swarm vessel scored a direct hit on the port shields. Warning alarms shrieked across the bridge. Her damage control officer shouted reports about hull breaches and failing systems. "We cannot hold this position," her second officer said quietly. "Admiral, we need to retreat." Laura knew he was right. They had been fighting for 3 hours and accomplished nothing except delaying the inevitable. The swarm would take Helios system, consume its 4 inhabited planets, and move on to the next system. 15 billion people would die. She was about to give the retreat order when her sensor officer gasped. "Admiral, new contacts? Multiple ships coming in at extreme velocity. Configuration unknown. Energy signatures are off the scale." Laura looked at the display and felt her heart skip. The new ships were massive, dwarfing even Valorian dreadnoughts. Their design was sleek and predatory, incorporating technology that made her fleet look ancient by comparison. And they were moving at speeds that should have been impossible. "Can you identify them?" she asked. The sensor officer's hands flew across his console. "Admiral, transponder codes identify them as human vessels. Lead ship is broadcasting as UHN's resolve. Human ships." After 8 years of silence, humanity had returned. The human fleet numbered only 12 vessels, compared to the swarm's hundreds. But they moved with absolute confidence. They did not request coordination or wait for orders. They simply engaged. What happened next would be analyzed by military academies across the galaxy for generations. The human ships used weapons that Laura had never seen before. Beams that seemed to disintegrate matter at the molecular level. Missiles that phased through shields and exploded inside enemy holes. Point defense systems that created walls of destruction nothing could penetrate. A swarm vessel the size of a Valorian cruiser charged one of the human ships. The human vessel did not even slow down. It fired a single weapon that looked like a pulse of blue light. The swarm ship simply ceased to exist, converted to its component atoms in an instant. The battle lasted for hours. The swarm was annihilated completely. Not a single organism survived. Not a single human ship took damage. Laura stood on the bridge of her dying flagship, watching the human vessels move through the debris field with clinical precision. They were making sure every swarm organism was dead, using some kind of scanning technology to detect even the smallest fragments. Her communication officer spoke up, his voice shaking. "Admiral, the human flagship is hailing us. They are offering rescue operations for our damaged vessels." Laura straightened her uniform despite the sparks falling around her and the list in the deck beneath her feet. "Put them through." The view screen activated, and Laura found herself looking at a human she recognized from intelligence files. Fleet Admiral Jake Morrison, the former ambassador who had delivered humanity's farewell 8 years ago. He looked older now, harder, but his eyes still held that same sharp intelligence. "General Kim," Morrison said with professional courtesy, "your flagship is experiencing critical failures. We are prepared to evacuate your crew if you give the word." Laura fought down the urge to refuse out of pride. Her people were dying. "We accept your offer, Admiral Morrison. Thank you." Morrison nodded and cut the transmission. Within minutes, human rescue craft were docking with Valorian ships throughout the fleet. They were fast, efficient, and completely impersonal. They saved lives without ceremony or expectation of gratitude. Laura was among the last to leave the celestial dawn. A human rescue team led her to a transport craft that looked more advanced than most Valorian warships. The interior was clean and functional. Technology she could not begin to understand built into every surface. They took her to the Resolve, the human flagship. Laura had commanded some of the most advanced vessels in the Valorian fleet, but walking through the corridors of the Resolve made her feel like a primitive seeing fire for the first time. Everything was beyond her understanding. The walls seemed to shift and respond to presence. Displays showed information in formats she had never seen. The very air hummed with power. She was brought to what appeared to be an observation deck. Morrison stood there, hands clasped behind his back, watching the cleanup operations through a massive viewport. "Why did you come back?" Laura asked without preamble. Morrison did not turn around. "We did not come back for you. The swarm threatened to breach the Terminus region. That is our space now. We were protecting our borders. Your survival was incidental." The words stung, but Laura appreciated the honesty. "The galaxy needs help, Admiral. The swarm has destroyed 17 civilizations in 6 months. We cannot stop them alone. Now Morrison turned to face her. General Kim, 8 years ago the galaxy made it very clear that humanity was not welcome. You voted to deny us basic recognition 47 times. When we left, your people tried to steal our research and claim our territories. When we defended ourselves, you sent warships to attack us. Why should we care what happens to you now? Laura had no good answer. She wanted to say that those decisions were made by politicians, not soldiers. That many in the military had respected humanity even when the council did not. But Morrison was right. The galaxy had made its choice. We made mistakes, she said quietly. Terrible mistakes. We were arrogant and blind. But billions of innocent people are dying. People who had nothing to do with council politics or diplomatic decisions. Does humanity have so little compassion left? Morrison's expression did not change. We have plenty of compassion, General. We have compassion for our own people, who spent 15 years being treated like primitive children. We have compassion for the smaller species that the council bullies and ignores. We have compassion for civilizations that show basic decency and respect. What we do not have is any obligation to save people who would have watched us burn without lifting a finger. He walked to a console and pulled up a star map. The swarm's advance was marked in red, spreading like a disease across the galactic rim. The swarm is your problem. Deal with it. We will ensure they do not threaten human territory. Beyond that, you are on your own. Laura felt desperation rising. Admiral, please. I am not asking for myself. I am asking for the billions who will die. Morrison studied her for a long moment. Tell me, General, if the situation were reversed, if humanity was being devoured by the swarm and we came begging the council for help, what would they say? Laura opened her mouth to answer, then stopped. She knew exactly what the council would say. They would express regret, cite resource limitations, maybe send thoughts and prayers. But they would not risk their own people to save humans they considered inferior. That is what I thought, Morrison said. You are not asking us to be better than you were. You are asking us to be what you should have been all along. That is not how this works. He gestured to the door. Your people are being given medical treatment in temporary quarters. Once we have eliminated all swarm presence in this sector, we will transport you to the nearest Valorian facility. After that, do not contact us again. Humanity has moved beyond galactic society. We will not be drawn back in. Laura was escorted from the observation deck. As she walked through the impossible corridors of the human ship, surrounded by technology that seemed like magic, she realized the full scope of what the galaxy had lost. Humanity had not just left, they had evolved. They had become something the galaxy could not match and did not deserve. The human fleet departed. Helios systems 16 hours later, they left behind detailed scans of swarm biology and tactical data on how to fight them. It was more help than the Gal Axie had any right to expect, far less than it needed. General Laura Kim returned to Valorian space and submitted her report. The reaction was mixed. Relief that humanity had intervened. Fear at the technology they displayed. Anger that they refused to help further. But mostly, there was the slow, creeping realization that the galaxy's problems were the galaxy's responsibility now. Humanity had made their position clear. They were done carrying the burden for people who had never shown them respect. 3 years had passed. Since humanity destroyed the swarm at Helios system, the galaxy had learned to live with a new reality. Humanity existed beyond the terminus frontier, powerful and distant, intervening only when threats approached their borders. The Devourer swarm continued its advance through galactic space, but whenever it came near human territory, it was destroyed with the same clinical efficiency that General Laura Kim had witnessed. High Chancellor Dexerone sat in his private chambers, reviewing economic reports that grew worse each quarter. He was old now, approaching the end of his natural lifespan. The last decade had not been kind to him or his legacy. History would remember him as the leader who drove humanity away. the prosperity that had left with them. His aide entered quietly. "Chancellor, there is another request for aid. The Mercian colony worlds are under swarm attack. They are asking if we can petition humanity for assistance." Dexerone made a gesture of frustration with two of his forearms. "Humanity has made their position clear. They will not help. Tell the Mercian to evacuate if they can, or fight if they must. We have nothing else to offer them." The aide hesitated. "Chancellor, there are reports that some smaller species have been receiving anonymous assistance. Medical supplies appearing at struggling colonies. Defensive satellites materializing around threatened worlds. The aid is never acknowledged, but everyone knows the source." Nexerone had heard these reports. Humanity was helping species that had shown them respect during their time in galactic space. The Delvari, who had voted for human membership. The Mercian, who had traded fairly with human merchants. The Yath, who had always supported human proposals. These species found aid in their darkest hours, always unattributed, always just enough to make a difference. But for the Valorians, the Carthon, the Zynthians, and the other powers who had voted against humanity time and again, there was nothing. Just silence and the clear message that they were on their own. Dexerone dismissed his aide and pulled up a classified report from Commander Pete Collins. Pete had spent the last 3 years studying humanity from a distance, compiling intelligence from every source available. His findings painted a picture that terrified the Valorian. Leadership. Humanity had colonized over 300 worlds beyond the terminus. Their population had tripled through advanced cloning and life extension technologies. They had encountered and defeated at least 4 hostile civilizations that the galaxy never knew existed. Their technology was now so far ahead that comparing it to galactic standards was like comparing starships to wooden boats. Most disturbing was Pete's conclusion. Humanity was not preparing to conquer the galaxy. They were not building up for revenge. They were simply ignoring galactic civilization entirely, expanding in different directions, exploring deeper into the space between galaxies. The galaxy had become irrelevant to them. Vexerone closed the report and stood, walking to the window of his tower. He could see Concordia Prime spread out below. The station where he had dismissed human ambitions so casually 15 years ago. He had been so certain that humanity needed the galaxy more than the galaxy needed humanity. He had been catastrophically wrong on the far side of galactic space. Dr. Sophie Grant stood in her laboratory on the human colony world of New Haven. She directed a team of 300 researchers working on projects that would have seemed like fantasy to the Galactic Council. Medical treatments that could extend lifespans by centuries. Agricultural systems that could feed billions on worlds the galaxy considered uninhabitable. Energy sources that tapped into fundamental forces the Council did not understand. Her assistant brought her the latest batch of requests for aid from galactic sources. There were hundreds now, desperate pleas from species facing the swarm or economic collapse or medical crises. Sophie reviewed each one carefully, sorting them into categories. Requests from species that had supported humanity went into one pile. These would receive aid quietly and without fanfare. Species that had been neutral got another pile. These might receive limited assistance if resources allowed. Species that had actively opposed humanity went into a third pile. These received nothing. Sophie felt no particular satisfaction in denying aid to people who had scorned humanity. She simply had limited resources and chose to help those who had shown themselves worthy of help. The Carthon could solve their food shortage problems themselves. The Zynthians could fix their own computer systems. The Valorians could develop their own medical treatments. A communication came through from Fleet Command. Admiral Morrison wanted to speak with the Zen Relations Committee. Sophie connected to the secure channel, and Morrison's image appeared on her screen. "Dr. Grant, we have detected swarm movement near Valorian core systems. Current projections show they will reach the Valorian homeworld in approximately 4 months. The Valorian military is not strong enough to stop them. Casualties are estimated in the hundreds of billions." Sophie considered this information carefully. "Admiral, our standing policy is to intervene only when the swarm threatens human territory. The Valorian homeworld is well outside that boundary. Morrison nodded. I am aware of the policy. However, I wanted the committee's input before making a final decision. This would be the end of the Valorian Empire. Whatever we think of their government, that is a significant number of civilian casualties. Sophie thought about Thexoron, dismissing human proposals with barely a concealed contempt. She thought about Valorian scientists, demanding access to human research while offering nothing in return. She thought about the military expedition that had tried to seize human territory by force. Then she thought about something Jake Morrison had said to her once. Years ago, when they were both still serving in galactic space, we should be better than them, not just different from them. Send them the tactical data we used against the swarm, Sophie said finally. Anonymous transmission? No attribution. Give them a fighting chance. Whether they take it is up to them. Morrison smiled slightly. Already done. I wanted to make sure the committee agreed with the decision. Transmission ended. Sophie returned to her work, knowing that somewhere in Valorian space, military commanders were receiving information that might save their civilization. They would probably never know it came from humanity. That was fine. Humanity did not help for gratitude or recognition anymore. On the UHN's Resolve, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck watching the stars beyond the terminus frontier. His second officer, Commander Linda Hayes, joined him at the viewport. Sir, do you think the galaxy will ever change? Linda asked. Morrison watched a distant nebula slowly collapse under its own gravity, birthing new stars. Maybe, in a few generations, when new leaders emerge who were not responsible for the old failures. When species learn to value partnership over hierarchy. When they understand that respect is earned, not demanded. And until then, Linda asked, until then, we build. We grow. We explore deeper into the dark between galaxies. We become what we always had the potential to be, without anyone holding us back or demanding we prove our worth. Morrison pulled up a star chart showing human expansion, 300 colonized worlds and counting. Research stations pushing into unexplored regions. Trade networks that connected human settlements across thousands of light years. A civilization that had grown from 8 billion refugees to 25 billion citizens in just over a decade. They feared we would be vengeful conquerors, Morrison said quietly. They were wrong. We are something far more dangerous to their worldview. What is that, sir? Linda asked. Morrison smiled slightly. We are people who do not need them at all, and nothing terrifies the powerful more than becoming irrelevant. He zoomed out the star chart, showing the vast expanse of space humanity was exploring. The galaxy that had rejected them was a small, bright cluster in one corner of the display. The rest was dark space, waiting to be discovered and claimed. The galaxy wanted humanity to know our place, Morrison said. They succeeded. Our place is anywhere we choose to be. And we choose to be out there beyond their borders and their politics and their petty power games. We choose to be free. Linda looked at the display with something like awe. Where do we go from here, sir? Morrison gestured at the endless dark. Everywhere. We have entire galaxies to explore, civilizations to meet who might actually appreciate partnership. We have technology to develop, worlds to settle, mysteries to solve. The galaxy we left behind is one small part of a much larger universe. He turned away from the viewport and headed toward the bridge. Set course for the Perseus arm. Long-range sensors detected some interesting anomalies out there. Could be natural phenomena, or could be something else. Either way, we should investigate. Aye, sir, Linda said. What about the swarm threatening Valorian space? Morrison paused. We sent them the data they need. If they use it properly, they will survive. If they do not, that is their choice. Either way, it is no longer our responsibility. The Resolve and its accompanying fleet jumped to faster-than-light speeds, heading away from galactic space toward regions no other species had explored. Behind them, the galaxy they had left struggled with problems humanity could have helped solve. But humanity had learned a hard lesson about offering help to people who did not value it. The galaxy had wanted humanity to know their place. Now the galaxy would have to learn its own place in a universe where humanity had moved on without them. The powerful had learned that power means nothing if those you seek to control simply walk away. The proud had learned that pride is cold comfort when you face extinction alone. And somewhere in the dark between stars, humanity continued forward, building something new and better, proving that the best revenge is not destruction, but success. They had been rejected and had responded by becoming extraordinary. They had been dismissed and had responded by becoming essential, then choosing to leave. They had been underestimated and had responded by exceeding every expectation. The negotiations had failed. Humanity had departed, and the galaxy had begun to fear, not because humanity threatened them, but because humanity no longer cared. In the end, that indifference was the most devastating response of all.